Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Compensation and Coffee, our new episode. Today we have dear Puneet Swani with us. I'm your host, Senem, an ex-HR professional and a co-founder at Compport. This podcast is sponsored by Compport, a global compensation management software. And thank you so much for listening to us. And as I mentioned, we have Puneet Swani with us today. He is a well-known rewards and talent consultant, thought leader in Asia Pacific. Right now, he's with Aon. He will introduce himself very soon. But I met with Puneet Swani, I believe, 3 years ago. And it was always, and it is always so inspirational and thought-provoking to hear him. He has a vast amount of experience in rewards and talent consultancy. He worked with several organizations across different industries and geographies. And I'm sure today you will get so many hints, tips, and practical insights from him. Welcome, Puneet. I know my words are not enough to describe you or introduce you, so I will leave it to you. Would you like to introduce yourself for the audience?
Thanks, Sonam. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. Really excited to be here and having a discussion with Sanam on some of the topics which are top of the mind for a lot of HR professionals. As Sanam mentioned, I've been in the HR consulting profession for the last 25 plus years. I recently joined Aon to head the talent solutions business for the APAC region. But before that, spent about 16 years with Mercer and 8 years with Hewitt, again in HR consulting roles. I've had the opportunity and privilege to work across geographies, so APAC, Middle East, Africa, Europe, UK, LATAM, are some of the geographies where I've spent time working with clients and their workforces as well, and excited to be here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Puneet, for your time and interest. Maybe before we deep dive into our topic, I have one question about you. So you are in this business for a long time. What is the best thing that you like about what you are doing?
So I think everyone has to find their own passion, right? And what gives me energy is being the ability to work with clients and helping them solve for their people problems. There have been times when clients have come and I've worked with clients and clients have said, oh, I've got 40% attrition rate. Is there something we can do around it? And then over the 6 months, 9 months, we've done a number of interventions with them, and end of that project, we kind of showcase them how over the last 6 months, their attrition rate probably has gone down. So, that whole satisfaction of doing something which has tangible value or impact to a client is something which really kind of energizes me and kind of gives me that, motivation to continue doing it. And working with clients, especially around the people issues, has its own dynamic challenges there as well, right? So it's also not something which you're doing day in and out of the same thing. Every time it's a different client issue, every time there's a different solution, because the client's, workforce requires a very different kind of a solution compared to what another client's workforce required as well. So that's probably something which kind of really gives me that motivation.
Amazing. It sounds so fulfilling, Puneet. And I'm sure the clients that you are working with are so lucky. And today I'm also very lucky to have you because considering your experience and expertise in this domain, I think we can talk about anything and everything around rewards, around talent. So it's a luxury to have you, such a guest like you. But today we will focus on skills-based pay management or total rewards management. So it sounds like a new topic, but we all know that it's not something new. We will talk about everything very soon in this podcast. But before we start, let's explain the basics. So, what is skills-based pay management or total rewards management mean?
Skills-based pay has existed for a number of years. It's not something which is kind of coming in new. But I think there's a big change in how organizations used to pay for skills and how that, whole journey towards a skill-based pay is changing. So if you remember, even in year 2000 or in late 90s, a lot of software professionals used to have Y2K skills, right, which was to make computers ready for year 2000. And these professionals used to get a premium, and it was called a hot skill premium because that was a skill which was very high in demand, and hence you would give a premium to them around that. So it's always existed in some shape or form, but more and more organizations are now moving to a planned approach towards skill-based pay. So the difference that time was whatever skill is in hot demand, just give extra premium to everyone who has that skill, and that becomes a skill-based premium. Over time, as organizations have started to align their own organization structures to be more skill focused rather than job based focus, skill based pay is taking more precedence because organizations now want to reward individuals for upskilling them, for reskilling them, aligning them to future skills. And that does not mean everyone who has that skill will be paid the same premium. It now looks at it to say what is the proficiency level of that skill you have. How much skill do I need in my organization to be successful there as well. So this is much more broader program around it rather than just throwing a premium to some individuals because they have a high in demand skill set there. So that's been the journey I have seen around skill based pay and what does skill based pay actually mean in today's context.
Perfect. So I was in year 2004. I was working for a telecommunications company, and I was there almost 8 years. And that time we were talking about a skill-based pay management. So, or if we go to oil and gas industry or defense industry, these topics are quite established and mature there. But in the last, I think, a couple of years, skill-based compensation is becoming more and more popular, especially in the IT industry. So that's what I am observing as a trend. Let's assume that it's something new, or it has some differences compared to the past versions. How a company should decide, or when a company should decide that they should step into a skill-based compensation management framework? What are the
So
signs?
yeah, so I think it needs to it it needs not to be done just because everyone is doing a skills based pay, right? It needs to be done because there's a end which the organization is trying to look at, right? And if you look at a lot of organizations right now going through big transformational changes in their organization now, whether that is automation, whether that is impact of AI, whether that is let's say outsourcing work out of the non-core work around it. Now, all of this is making organizations rethink, what gets done by humans, what gets done by machines. Now, as they reorganize all of this, they're realizing that the skills which will be required now to be successful for that organization might be very different from what the skills required earlier were, right? So, if you take let's say a retail person who kind of does a retail store, right? Earlier the person would kind of be supermarket, right? The person is doing all the checkouts, all of that. Now you're doing automatic scanning of your items and paying through credit card, so you don't need the skill of a retail person who's doing a checkout. But maybe you need a very different skill now because you're trying to create an immersive experience for the customer or the consumer. So the individual probably is then standing around the shelves and explaining them the pluses and minuses of one item versus another item, right? So there is a big change in the skill set required, and hence companies now need to align individuals to say, I need you not to have those skills to scan an item, but I need you to have a communication skill of being able to influence customers towards certain solutions. Uh, and this would then align to say, the organization needs to build new skills around it. Some other organizations are taking a different approach and saying, how work was done in my organization is now very different because AI or machines are doing a lot of this work, and now I will require a very different skill. Let's talk about something very close to our hearts: compensation managers, right? Comp and ben managers, even till now, till recent past, were doing a lot of work in building salary structures, building comp ratios, talking about annual increases. How do I distribute? How do I create a increase grid? Based on performance ratings, all of that. Now all of this is now getting done by compensation tools, technology platforms, and hence what will be the role of a compensation professional now? So what skills will a compensation professional require now? Maybe data interpretation skills, because all of this is being thrown. Maybe communication skills, because now you're talking to the business heads and explaining, this is how things will be done and this is what the impact will be around this. And this is the drive, I think, which is pushing organizations to think through that skill-based pay journey. So my advice to any organization which is thinking through the skills journey is to first figure out what nature of work has changed in the organization. And if that work has changed, what skills will be required to deliver that work now or deliver some new work now, and hence align in building those skills for those job holders who were there around it. And Com probably gives a very easy example of how that compensation manager skills might have changed, and hence you need to build different skills.
Got it. So a compensation professional should have a good understanding of what is changing in the industry, what is changing in the market competition, and what is changing in the company and our objectives, and what key skills are, coming up, and how should we set the things accordingly. So let's assume that Puneet, a company will start skill-based pay design from scratch, and they're doing it for the first time in their life. What are the typical steps, typical process that they need to follow? I mean, it will be great if we can give the audience maybe a step-by-step guide.
So I guess the first thing you need to do if you want to focus on either a skill-based organization or a skill-based pay system, you need to first break down the job you have into different tasks or activities, right? Because once you identify what tasks or activities are now being done by the individual, then you can figure out what skills will be required to do that thing. Then that follows by skill-based pay system, which is later on, right? So step one, break jobs or roles into tasks or activities. Second, identify what tasks or activities are getting automated because you're now implementing a new technology or you're outsourcing or automating. Then whatever work is required, what will it require? So what kind of a competency or a skill will be required to deliver that task around it? And once you've identified what skill is required to do that task, then you start aligning people's compensation to acquiring that skill and kind of honing that skill as well, because now individuals will be interested to build that skill because you've aligned compensation to it and said the more the skill you build, the more your compensation changes, or your salary increases are going to be based on acquiring or a new skill or moving up on the skill level rather than the other way around. So that's probably the easiest way to kind of focus on building a skill-based organization and then implementing a skill-based pay system.
Mm-hmm. And I think that the key point here is to build the skill-based organization, because once you have that as your fundamental step, then you need to shape all the HR programs, processes accordingly, from hiring to learning and development, talent management, and of course, rewards management. And things should work in harmony, in alignment. let's assume that we have the skills, we broke down the jobs, we identify the key skills, and we build everything around them. So I want to talk about the market data. So
Mhm.
how the market data supports the skill-based architecture? Because most of the time, com professionals, they need competitions data, the market data. So do you support that?
So I think it's a journey around it, right? So because different organizations at different stages of building that skill-based organization, right? So right now we take market data on based on positions, right? Here are the top 50 positions, and I want market data for this, right? Eventually, you will see a move to say, here are the top 50 skills in my organization, and here is the market data for that. For that to happen, one, you need a minimum number of companies in each of the industries to have moved to that, because you can only benchmark what is available in the market. So if the market is still having a position-based pay system, you have moved to a skill-based pay system. How are you going to do that? You mentioned earlier something about the technology industry or the IT industry. You said they've probably been on this journey for a much longer period of time. So if you look at the IT industry and the way they benchmark, they would benchmark something like to say, oh, this is a Python engineer with 5 years of experience. This is a Java engineer with X amount of years of experience, right? So now they're linking a skill and the experience of that skill or acquisition of that skill and comparing it to market benchmarks as well. So that is one way where organizations can start moving on to this. Now, obviously, then consulting firms which provide that market data also need to rejig their own kind of operating models, right? Where you start collecting data for both skills and jobs. Right now, we collect data only for positions or jobs, but we also need to start collecting data for skills. Uh, so we need to change our operating models to align with that. Organizations need to start paying people based on skills, right? And as I said, not just hot skill premium, which used to exist earlier, but paying people around it to say there's a big difference between a C++ or Java engineer versus a Python engineer. Versus someone, let's say, who's doing another field of specialization. And once you start paying individuals like that, that's when you will start comparing salaries from the market same way as well. Or prompt engineers, right? So prompt engineers probably seem to getting the highest premiums at this point of time compared to some of the other language engineers for that matter.
Okay, got it, got it. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. And from your perspective, when shifting to a skill-based organization or pay management, what is the biggest challenge that organizations face, and how can we overcome that challenge?
So I think the biggest issue is that you are trying to transition from a job-based or position-based system which you have in your organization to a skill-based system, right? So can you suddenly stop doing one thing and start doing other thing in one fine day? Probably not. Which means you will have to start picking up areas or functions in your organization to say, I'm starting to move around, skill-based by breaking up tasks or activities of this function first, whether that's HR, whether that's finance, whether that's IT, whichever function you pick it up from. Then you start helping that organization kind of to say all the HR processes, like you said. If I'm hiring in my HR organization or in my IT organization, I'm not hiring a comp and ben manager. I'm hiring someone who has analytical skills, who has data skills, who has data interpretation skills, who has problem solving skills. Who are these individuals? They could come from any of those jobs. So your talent acquisition process has changed. Then comes your hiring process, which will change. Their L&D, their compensation, everything will have to be based on that. So you will have to pick up either pilot functions, or you'll have to pick up one or two functions. Start doing it, and every 3 months or 6 months, start adding on to that list around it, because you still have a business to run. So you certainly can't say from tomorrow onwards, no one has a position title, no one has a job, a role, everyone has a skill, and I'm going to be hiring and paying through the skills. So we'll have to get the organization through that journey of that skill-based organization. And the easiest way to do it is to pick up functions and keep adding on to that when till the time when the whole organization has moved to a skill-based organization.
Got it, got it. And I think it is important to have an understanding of today, the current state, but also the future state. And so I think it requires a wider vision, and your radars should be always open and on, because skills are shifting quite dramatically. Maybe let's say any industry, any company who did this work 1 year back or 2 years back, most probably they are revisiting everything and doing so many things from scratch, because AI, for example, as a disrupting technology, changed the landscape a lot. Having an understanding of today, but also imagining the future possibilities and shaping things accordingly, doing maneuvers whenever needed, I think is also a key skill when doing all those things.
Absolutely. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge which organizations face, right? Which is while I'm getting into that journey of a skill-based organization, the future skills keeps changing, right? So the goalpost keeps changing to say what skills will be relevant maybe in the next 2 years. And by the time we reach the next 2 years, there are another set of skills which are relevant for the next 3 years around it. So I think that organizations have to be very agile as when they're implementing something like this. So it's not going to be we've implemented something now for the next 5 years or 10 years. These are the skills and this is how we're going to do it. Because like you said, skills are changing as part of the organizations are evolving around it. So it has to be a moving goalpost, one. And second is we need to be very much in touch with what skills will be required in my industry, in my organization to be successful. And that skill definition could be changing every year or 2 years as business changes, or with AI, more and more disruption comes in.
Example in your mind that you can share with the audience today, a company who successfully implemented and utilizing the skill-based organization and the pay programs. We don't need to mention the brand or the logo, but if you can introduce and explain what they did well, it will be helpful.
Sure. So, I've personally worked with one large financial services organization. The other one was a consumer goods company. And what they were trying to do was, again, to say, let's start breaking the jobs into tasks or activities, and then let's start hiring people based on those skills. So, they used to have a analyst role in their organization. So they used to have operation analysts, financial analysts, marketing analysts, HR analysts, all of these functions used to have analysts, right? And they said there are 20 jobs in this, which we have, which are analyst jobs. What they did was you say, okay, let's break the analyst job and say what skills will be required of what an analyst does. And then they came up with a framework to say, as an analyst, you need to have logical reasoning. As an analyst, you need to have problem solving skills. As an analyst, you need to have data literacy skills, right? As an analyst, you need to have interpretation skills because you're looking at data and kind of interpreting data as well. And they came up with, let's say, 5 or 6 skills which are core. And then they started going out in the market and saying, here are the skills I'm looking for an individual. I don't care what your job title is. I don't care what your position is called. If you have these skills, we are interested in hiring you or whatever. So your talent acquisition process changed. You're no longer going out in the market and saying, I'm looking for an operation analyst or hiring a financial analyst. Then when it came to pushing that individuals into the jobs, right? They pulled all of that analyst jobs and said, okay, operations team, when do you need these skills, right? And operations team would say we would need them every month or month end because that's when we churn out a lot of reports, right? Finance will say I need it beginning of the month because beginning of the month is when all my reporting happens around it. So they created a process to say for first week of the month, finance requires 200 hours of these skills. So there was a pool of these individuals with these skills which were hired. They were not assigned to jobs like an ops analyst, HR analyst. They were all assigned to a pool, and from that pool there was a like a staffing kind of a manager which was allocating these skills to say, okay, 200 hours, you have X number of man hours depending on how many people were there around it, right? So they kind of went through a process like this for each of those jobs which they broke into skills, and started looking at it this way. So this is one example of it. Another example is where a lot of organizations started using talent marketplaces, right? So a talent marketplace is your internal talent marketplace where you mapped everyone individual on his skills, not on the role they do, right? I'm a finance manager, HR manager. No, what skills do I have around it? Any future job was being advertised based on the skills, and it's an interactive talent marketplace to say, we are looking for someone who has 10 years of business development experience. We are looking at someone who has X amount of years of managing large teams, for example, around it as well. And people started applying to internal opportunities using that as a criteria, not the job title or the position title as a criteria. So again, two examples of how organizations have done or started implementing some of this.
Perfect. Thank you so much for sharing these examples. They're quite impressive and interesting, Puneet. This morning I was on LinkedIn. I saw Josh Berson's new post about the AI. So obviously it is changing the job market, talent marketplace, skills, everything dramatically. And as per him, something alarming is happening to the job market, and AI is replacing the jobs faster than we ever thought. And according to the data that he shared, since 2022, the share of jobs posted on Indeed in software programming has declined by more than 50%. I think this is a really huge, and it's obvious that AI is in a very fast way changing the things. How do you see the impact of AI? So that's my first question, Puneet. And organizations, we all know that they are working on the super worker strategy. So how do you think the efforts there are going? So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Yeah.
So I think there are loads of studies which have been done by different consulting organizations which talk about the fact that, irrespective of how fast AI is coming, right? And maybe 70 or 80% of the jobs are going to see a significant, shift in how those jobs are kind of being delivered or done around it. Less than 20% of the jobs are actually going to get impacted because, like I said, the nature of your work might change, but the job might remain, right? So from a retail, the checkout example I gave, right? That become an automated self checkout now, so the nature of that job has changed because now I've become a consumer experience kind of an assistant or whatever around it, but my job hasn't gone. If you look at a surgeon right now, a lot of surgeries are getting done through robotics, right? So robotic surgeries are done. That does that mean the job of a surgeon would go away? Probably not, because you need someone to run on the robotics, right? By wearing a machine or by wearing a glove or whatever around it. So you kind of involved in a different way around it because now you're operating the robotic machine rather than doing that operation yourself. Or in certain cases where it's totally automated, you are kind of monitoring the patient by looking at that screen. You're probably sitting with the patient's family and you're explaining them what is happening. So now your interpersonal skills are there, your communication skills are there, you're observing that surgery to be done around it. The job of surgeon hasn't gone down, but the skill or the job profile of the surgeon has gone down. So, and what's expected is that for 80% of the jobs, this is what's going to happen, right? Which is, yeah, the nature of your work will change, but your job does not disappear for that matter. Having said that, the reality is that AI is automating a lot of transactional processes, right? Which means maybe the number of people required to do that is less now. So you look at recruitment. AI is able to shortlist so many candidates based on, the criteria you've put in together. You don't need five headhunters to be, scanning 5,000 CVs and giving the list of top five or top 10. AI is able to do that, right? So the number of headhunters or recruiters maybe you require might go less because AI has automated that transactional process around it. But you still need someone to have those discussions with the candidates. You still need someone to have those discussions with the business around it. So the job of recruiter doesn't go away, but the nature of job work which the recruiter is doing might go differently. So my personal view is that AI will aid in helping improve transactional processes or eliminate transactional processes. It will speeden up a lot of delivery around some of those things, and it might change the nature of work for jobs around it, but it does not take away the jobs altogether.
Yeah, perfect. And in the geographies that you are concentrating on, how do you think that organizations or HR leaders are doing in terms of incorporating impacts of AI to their organizational design, skills design, and many other people programs?
So I think again, there's loads of data which says 70 to 80% of organizations are very interested in implementing AI, right? But less than 20% are actually doing something around it, right? One, I guess the issue is the cost of implementing an AI, right? The time you will take for you to kind of master that AI, and you do look at the recruitment example, right? To say here are five things when I need to look at when I look at a, let's say, a software engineer or a Java engineer around it, is what is required. So being able to program that AI for every single job to be shortlisted, implement that, make sure it's not biased, make sure, so there's a lot of risk around biasness in AI as well, right? So it is not creating all of that. Then only will you start taking advantages of that AI around it, right? So that is one concern. Having said that, organizations have started using AI, and if you look at HR as an example, in a lot of transactional process, as I said, shortlisting of candidates based on a criteria, while the recruiter still goes through, the shortlisted candidates. Automating job descriptions, right? A lot of times, organizations needed to keep their job descriptions updated all the time, especially as the nature of work is changing now, right? But now you can use an AI to kind of create a draft for you, a job description, and you can just refine it rather than writing something from a scratch perspective around it. Employee engagement, right? You have someone joining new, you can use AI to kind of do check-ins with the employee, 30 days, 90 days around it. Like, and it's like a AI chatbot which is having a discussion with the employee as real as a human being rather than a recorded messaging around it as well. Uh, on the reward side, we are seeing AI helping create a lot of simulated performance payouts, right? What if our profits are X percentage and our sales are Y percentage? What could be the payout versus if our profits are Y percentage and Z percentage around it? Uh, if I have 10 people, can I link my performance ratings, employee engagement, and compensation? And AI can help me say, here are the five people at highest risk in your organization around it, right? So these are areas where companies have started using some parts of AI. I guess the question is how do you keep AI updated, which means you have to keep feeding it with new data and ensure there are no biases around it. And then there are risks around data privacy and all of that. And I think that's where organizations are in that journey of figuring out what would be the right areas and tasks where we can use AI as we go into from an HR perspective.
I think for HR leaders or HR professionals, it's a big mission. I wish I was working as an HR professional in this era, exactly in this era. I think it's a really exciting, so many things to do. Yeah, it's so exciting. And I'm curious what will come next. Yeah. And I'm curious to see some very inspiring, successful examples in different companies. And Puneet, we are about to close. So I have maybe one last question for you. So it is already May 2025. For the next 1 year, what will be your biggest advice to HR leaders or comp leaders?
Oh, that's a tough one
Very
considering
wide question.
all
I'm
the
sure you have
change
so
which is
many, but
happening around.
yeah.
So my only advice will be, in this whole speed and all process of transformation and change and automating and using AI and all of that. Let's not forget why are we doing all of this, right? We are doing all of this for our people, our employees, our team members around it, right? Which means let's not forget the humans centric approach as well in our ability just to focus on machine and transforming processes. So a lot of time our processes or transformations fail because we never kept humans at the center of this, right? How will humans or my people or my employees experience this change, whether that's AI, whether that's automation, whether that's whatever thing we are doing around it? Because if they don't get it, if they don't adopt it, if they don't use it, there is no point. I can implement whatever HR system I want to, but if my employees are not using it, what is the point of that transformation? Will it get me the desired results? No. And that is why, as we start implementing a lot of technology, AI, automation, let's always ensure to see how would my employees feel about this? What will make it, will it make their life easier or difficult? And how will I get adoption of that technology? Because I can buy the best software, but if no one uses that software, it will not give me the return or the value around it. So that's my very high level piece of advice, which is let's keep humans or a human centric approach to any AI, technology, automation we decide to do in our organizations.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think it's a great closure. Human, no matter what happens, they're at the center of everything. And thank you so much, Puneet, for reminding this with your advice. And thank you so much for all the insights, experiences, thoughts, examples that you shared with us, Puneet. We are grateful. And thank you so much to the audience who are listening to us. And we hope to meet you in the next episode with another valuable guest to discuss another comp-related, rewards-related topics. Please keep following us, and thank you so much for your interest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Puneet.